All right, welcome to One Page Ahead podcast, where I break down the most popular self-help books one chapter at a time, so you don't have to read a single page and you get the conversational lesson. My name's Tsang, and this episode is chapter 4 of Atomic Habits, and it's called The Man Who Didn't Look Right. Now, why is this chapter called The Man That Didn't Look Right? It starts off the chapter with a quick, interesting story where this paramedic goes to a family dinner and sees her dad, and he seems off to her, not to anyone else, off to her. So she points it out and says, "You don't look right." And he says, "What do you mean?" Turns out he had 2 major artery obstructions, went through a life-saving surgery after that, and she essentially saved his life. But when asked, "How did you know that?" she said, "I don't know." So what? What does that even mean, and how does it have to do with chapter 4 of Atomic Habits? What are we learning here? Remember last chapter we talked about how our brain is a rewards detector. We're always looking for cues to reward ourselves. Well, it turns out we're also a pattern detector as well. In this chapter, it calls it a prediction machine. And it's interesting because you know what? You and I both, we are looking in our environment. We are constantly in different surroundings and we're making sense of all the information that's here. And we're trying to relate it back to our historical experiences as we continuously analyze what is happening. And then we tell ourselves, is it a safe space? How do I feel? And then so all that gets stored in our archive, where whenever we go through a similar experience or an environment, then we start to immediately put our feelings and mannerisms in place to help us best navigate that scenario. So I'm thinking about networking events. I'm thinking about students going to a new classroom. They've done it before. They know that feeling. They know what they need to do. And they do it similar to the last time that they did it. But because there's new information, they're constantly cross-referencing it to find the most effective solution. All right, here's what I'm thinking immediately. I'm thinking someone hands me a new phone, okay? Let's say a new iPhone. I am going to know how to use it. It's because I've taken my historical experiences with my older iPhones or the iPhone that I currently have, and then I try to figure out what's new with this one, and I store that information, archive it, and so when someone else hands me a different iPhone, I know how to do the exact same thing, and I get more and more effective at solving that problem, which is ambiguity of how I use new devices. Another thing is driving a car. For example, if I get put into a different car, I'm probably going to know how to drive it. So are you, because we're going to take our past experiences and then re-gauge the surrounding, thinking about how far is the distance from this bumper to the wall, the different functions in this car, and very quickly we're going to figure it out. Also, you just learning this chapter with me in this video, you are processing and storing information that you might not use immediately, but it may come up somewhere down in time, and it's all going to make sense. You are going to have this conversation with someone else, and you're going to learn something else, and you're going to build a stronger foundation. And that is how we create better versions of ourselves. That's my opinion. So this doubles down on my thought around as we continue to try new things, as uncomfortable as they are, we're going to get better and better and better at solutioning the different scenarios that we're put in, because it teaches us how to deal with ambiguity and how to solve problems most effectively. But what's true for one side has to be true on the other side as well. And so what does that mean? It also means that there are going to be negative things that we do that don't benefit us, but we've archived, stored, that we find comfort and solution to, which is fascinating and scary at the same time. We talked about the habit loops in chapter 3. If you haven't seen chapter 3 is in the channel somewhere. Chapter 3 talks about the habit loops, and we create habits based off of that. As we do them multiple times, it is going to become unconscious to us. What does that even mean? I'll give you an example. I'm a sales leader, I'm a sales coach, I'm a sales trainer. Very often I notice a habit in people is that when they answer questions, they start with an That is an unconscious habit that people have. Is it good? Is it bad? It's subjective. I don't know, because I know that when I speak to ChatGPT, it also gives you some ums and ahs to make it sound more natural. All right, here's a better example. Okay, so I know that this has happened to you as well. And if it hasn't, comment. Say, it's never happened to me, I'm perfect. When you leave the home, has there ever been an instance where you said to yourself, did I lock the door or turn off the stove? Those are unconscious habits. They're not bad, but it also proves the point that when we do something over and over again, it becomes unconscious to us and we're on autopilot. In the book, he gives the example of people finishing other people's sentences. And it also talks about the more that you repeat those patterns and unconscious behavior, the more it becomes a habit. So now what? Well, I'm going to share with you what is a most effective way to take ownership of your unconscious habits. And in this chapter, it talks about pointing and calling. Literally pointing something out and calling out what you're doing is already going to raise your awareness. If you really think about it, the same example of locking my front door, as I'm locking it and I say, I'm putting the key in, turning, locking my door, the door's locked. Just by doing that, I'm using multiple senses. It brings a unconscious behavior into a awareness of what I'm actually doing, because I'm physically doing the action, I'm verbalizing it, I'm listening to the key turn, and I'm using my eyes, I'm using my ears, I'm using my mouth to speak, and I'm using my hands to do the action. Because I'm doing that, it now brings that unconscious action to awareness. And it's the same thing in the book. It talks about how James Clear's wife always, when she leaves out, she says, I've got my keys, I've got my wallet, I've got my phone. So when we do that, we're more aware, and it helps us not forget things that we need to bring. The main takeaway from this chapter, and it's called the first law, is make it obvious. And it talks about something called a habit scorecard. And a habit scorecard is really just listing out all the habits that you have in the day. I'm thinking there are so many things that we do throughout the day that you are probably unconscious about, you and I both. But we do them and we get through the day. And the biggest challenge is always going to be, how do I make it more aware? So that's what the habit scorecard does. It's actually going to make you aware of your habits so that you can start adjusting it. Again, I don't think that we need massive change. I don't think that we need massive action for massive results and change. I think everything starts off with incremental adjustments. And what is more important is consistency and effort. So what is the habit scorecard? The habit scorecard is you list out all the things that you do. My recommendation is break it down by stages throughout the day. So for myself, what I did was I broke down my morning routine. Wake up, check my phone, go to the washroom, brush my teeth, wash my face. All right, I'm going to stop there for a second. It's getting way too personal. Once you have that list, you're more conscious of how you start your day. And then on every line item, what you should do is put a plus sign, a negative sign, or an equal sign. Is it a positive habit? Is it a negative habit? Or is it neutral? Now, I personally think like positive habits and negative habits are pretty subjective, but overall, the point of this exercise is that you are hyper aware of what you do in your routine. And so, for example, checking my phone right after I turn off my alarm checking my phone is a negative habit in my opinion, because I don't need to check my phone. I don't think it actually helps me progress my day. Instead, I would rather check it later on so that I can continue with my day, so that I can actually get my morning done right without getting sidetracked into work things. Turning off my alarm, neutral. Brushing my teeth, positive, because I want to feel fresh. You do that for your morning routine, and then I'll do it for my afternoon routine, which I haven't gotten to yet. And then I'll do it for my night routine, which I have a good idea, but I think night routines is where it really trips me up with what my next morning looks like. So when do I start winding down? And then as I start to then build out, you and me both, my habit list, then I get to select the things that maybe I want to just slightly tweak because I am more aware of what's actually going on. Now, you might be wondering, how do I know if a habit is actually good for me? Because I certainly had that. And instead of being biased to how I felt in the moment, I used the question that the book asked me to ask myself, which is, how is this habit serving me long term? And that should give you and I both the answer. Okay, my personal opinion here, I don't think that you should go ahead and list out all your habits throughout your day and start adjusting it right away, because we know that massive change doesn't typically work with people. You might feel super motivated and inspired to go and change things. This stage about making it obvious is just about being aware and observant of what is actually happening, so that you don't go ahead and continue to let your habits eat up your time and how you want to live your life. I remember a very special conversation that I had with one of my friends, and it was around, you got to be a little bit more kind to yourself sometimes. The world may be out to get you, but you don't have to go and get yourself. I don't even know if that makes sense, but sometimes I think that our expectations of ourselves are a little bit too harsh. And in this chapter, I think what's important is that you allow yourself to just recognize the things that you're doing first, and then changing some of them slowly. I think sometimes we beat ourselves over things that we wish were different, and it actually doesn't serve us well. For example, I'm on a journey to become the fittest version of myself. I've told myself that I'm someone who cares about my well-being and health, and I'm also someone that's going to create content that's going to help others better themselves. If this week's content isn't at par of my expectations, and if I haven't lost weight drastically or ate healthy and clean the entire week, I'm not going to sulk over it. I'm going to say, I am a person that cares about my health. And what would the person that cares about their health do? They would adjust. What would a person that cares about their content creation do? They would adjust. So remember, every single day we're bettering ourselves. You are bettering yourselves. There is a perfect version of you that you imagine, and you are going to get there, but it just takes the little steps. And that is the first law. Make it obvious. Chapter 4 for Atomic Habits. If you learn something, hit the like. If you want to follow me on this journey and you have a journey for betterment as well, subscribe, follow. If you've got a goal, comment it down below, because when you make it public, you make it real. That being said, this is One Page Ahead Podcast, and I will catch you in the next one where we break down the rest of the laws.